like water glass.
I haven't done anything.
So here I am, a dancing rabbit with Alice here,
You got it.
and the gnome dome.
There's the gnome dome.
This is beautiful.
We're in my little
spot.
shed area right now, and this is my house. And I was just saying, you know, like I'm always trying to figure out better weatherproofing for the outside, but yeah. And like I've tried lime wash on clay plaster, and it helps, but like it still roads. But it's so easy just to re-lime wash versus the re-plaster. And I just had some. This was left over from when I redid the little spot in the gnome dome, so I'm just like, I'm gonna slide this on here.
I like using a really straw-rich plaster, so that when it washes, that straw just kind of becomes a little fringed.
Like almost like a second, like a protective.
It's protective. Yeah. And then I've also look at that it's a mineral oil mix. So linseed oil mixed with mineral oil, 50-50.
Okay.
And then you take that mix
Mineral
and
spirits or mineral?
no, mineral oil.
Okay.
So mineral oil and linseed oil
Okay.
mixed 50-50. And then that conglomeration mixed 50-50 with mineral spirits. You only need 2 coats of that every 3 years.
On clay plaster?
Yeah. And then if you're repairing it, you just use that as the water with the mix to repair that. And yeah, Tim Kennedy out in California gave me that, said it works really well.
I know Mark has tried different things, and I had a cob bench over there, and Mark's great because he'll do something and he'll be like really excited about it. He'll be like, "This is the answer," and then be like, "Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing." And then like a year later, he's like, "No, it didn't work. Total failure." And I'm like, you know. But tried oiling a cob bench, and it's just out, and it's just like, this is not gonna last. Because our problem, you know, you get a little bit of moisture seeping in there, then it freezes, and then it's all history from there. But,
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, Osage, black locust, and like my thing is always like, you know, things rot, things change, and it's just like, you know, being intelligent about like, you know, this is out, so like this is gonna rot over time, but it's black locust, and it's just like I can easily access this again if I need to.
You can fix it when you need to fix it.
Yeah.
Oh, I like your copper edge here.
Oh, yeah, it's this whole porch needs to be redone because I tried playing around with just 2 layers of 6mm on this.
Yeah.
Liner, and it just doesn't work.
Nope, it doesn't.
And,
you got a little
what's
rot.
Cool, and like this is walnut, so it's resistant, but it's still not enough. This anyway. Some of this fungus I have noticed at one point was bioluminescent. So I had a little
fun
right here.
Okay, so leave a little.
Very is not very bright, you know, but it's like when it glows, it's like it's pretty.
So cool. It's almost it's over 90 degrees outside, but it's much cooler right here.
Yeah.
Under the tree, under the breeze, in the breeze. This breezeway makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I'm all about like. My big thing is like, you know, living on the interfaces, like living in between, living where the indoors and the outdoors meet.
Yes.
And like I feel like there's all sorts of like pattern language stuff about that.
Absolutely.
Just because like there's some houses like you go to, and like even houses here, they perform really well. You go up to the door and it's just like this 2-story wall. There's no overhang, and you like knock and it's like hot, and you're just like waiting, and like there's somebody in there. And anyway, it's just like it's all about giving that transition, like a nice space.
Yeah.
This is a temporary door. The frame is how it'll be, but sticky, you know. So gotta pull on that new door. But
this is the accommodations we make when we have to live in a space.
Yeah. So
see, why can't I have my chop saw on the kitchen counter?
You often do.
Yeah, it's super crude in here. I have done very little finish work. There's like a couple of like finish things that like I've sort of done. We got this little walnut Osage panel here.
Very pretty.
Oh yeah.
This is like net, you know, routed into this. But like, you know, you got this. You got like this Osage board behind you. This is
yeah.
Like, you know, this is the level of finish that I'm trying to get to, and I'm just like gorgeous. Keep getting distracted, and I also have a lot of hang-ups with just like this is sort of my like forever project, and I'm just like. Yeah, I you know, overthink things, try to get things perfect, and and then just sort of
The burlap does a nice job there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's, it definitely is very prone to dust and to cobwebs. And I think, if I ever tell people about feelings, like that's something to consider, which doesn't really bother me that much.
So check out milk paint, clear milk paint.
Mm-hmm.
Just buy a bunch of
What's with the dust?
cheap skim industrial milk and curdle it with a little vinegar, and then add some borax. And rinse off the clear whey, and blend that up with water and paint it. That's milk paint, and that completely eliminates the dust. Here and here. It just.
You wouldn't paint that on the burlap?
Yeah,
Yeah,
or like a little pump sprayer. If you get it blended well enough, a little pump sprayer. Just everything that dusts. Give it a little milk paint, because then you can wipe it with a cloth, and it's not gonna you're not gonna be breathing it.
So it's thick enough that it actually would like coat that burlap.
So it's clear coat that soaks in,
Okay.
and it
Okay.
yeah. So, but the other thing is
so
that
it's not,
once you
It's not a heavy
It's not like
paint or like a latex
painting
or anything.
over the burlap.
No.
correct, you're not covering anything. It's all going to be clear. The main thing I use it for is that even if I never do this top stuff, if I coat all of the cob, because I'm not going to get around to it for a bit, then there's nothing to make dust, and the rest of the drastically reduces. But I mean, this is my favorite surface. Our bedroom wall is like this,
Kind of.
and
Similar.
but I have it a little crunchier, right? A little just sculptier, crunchier, but I hate the dust.
More textured even than this.
More chopped straw.
Yeah.
More straw.
Yeah.
It's actually a fairly smooth surface, but the chopped straw is visible. He likes the
I
texture.
see. Yeah.
But the clear coat of, you can't see that it's there.
I see.
But
You
the dust
can
disappeared.
add color and opacity,
Yeah, make a
with
wash.
stuff. You can. But if you want to not have it pink or blue, or you just want to have that nice brown come through, you can just leave it clear.
Yeah, that's a good trick. I haven't. That's actually Dan, who he runs like Hardcore Sustainable. He's a great guy, and he has done. He's put a milk casein in lime wash, and I've seen him put that stuff. And he says it makes it a lot thicker.
Yes.
A lot easier to apply.
Yes.
And then it also dusts less.
In Ireland and those areas, they put salt in it, so that it's and then they'll hurl it. They'll thicken it and fling it at the wall. It's called hurling, and what happens is that the grit if you're doing a lime plaster, the grit ends up on the outside, and it's more protective. But yeah, adding salt, lard, casein, those are things that have made it more durable in different cultures.
There's so much to learn. There's so much to know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I haven't done. I don't know that much about finishes. I just haven't gotten into that too much. But
A little bit of cordwood here is kind of fun on the floor.
yeah. And I actually, it's like you can see it here. I had ultra fiber in here. I was even used like net wrap and like weaving things around here. And
Makes a better edge though.
Yeah, well, and then this whole all needs to get plastered or finished floor basically. But someday.
It's fun curves.
Someday,
Yeah.
exactly. Someday is the right answer.
I don't know. There's still, all sorts of things to say. So I did insulate on the back side of this to get the thermal mass inside the envelope. It performs very well in all seasons. In the summer, the main challenge is if the nights are cool, if the nights are 65 or below 70, and then I open the windows at night, it performs beautifully. It's when you get into July and the nights are now 75 and it's cooler in here, and I'm just like, I have the option of either opening the windows and
warming it up
and warming it up a little bit, but having ventilation, or keeping them closed, and then it's cooler, but then it starts getting really dank. If I don't open the windows for 3 or 4 days, it's going to start to get dank. And So.
So if you get an intern, you should have them dig you some ground tubes. And then put a solar fan up top.
And like Mark, that's his big thing is like earth coupled house where it has the passive earth tube ventilation coming in, and then you have the condensation pits to drain it out.
Right.
And I part of it is I don't really have the real estate here because I'm sort of and I just made all my gardens and shit, but yeah. Anyway, someday, but it's a cool idea.
Someday.
Yeah. And then in the winter, there's so much. It has too much mass, then it really is good for it. So if I'm in here every day and I have a little fire to cook on, in the evenings, it stays. It'll be 63 in the morning when I wake up. Nice. From the fire in the evening, and I just have this piece of crap for my.
That's all.
For my fires right now. But then if I leave, for like I have a partner who's a travel nurse. If I go away for a month to see her and then I come back, it's like, it's going to take some cranking fire, which is okay with me because I love cranking fires.
Right.
I love.
But that's a lot. That's shivering for a good while.
Well, I can crank it and I can crank this thing pretty hot and I can get it up to 60 pretty fast.
Okay.
But then it takes a while to have that flywheel effect of staying above 60.
We have an 8-ton rocket heater in our garage that has become an apartment and not much insulation in the place, and which it stays above 35 even when it's negative 20 out. But it takes forever to get that place warmed up.
Yeah.
If you decide to warm up.
The plan is eventually to actually replace this with a mass heater.
Yes.
Heater. That'll be this whole wall.
Oh yeah.
And that'll separate the bedroom from the living room. I've thought about having a see-through fire box. I don't think I will. I don't think I really need that.
No, having a bedroom with a warm wall is lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. What do I want to say? This back here. So earth bags. I like earth bags. They're very strong. This is 1 clay to 3 aggregate. But then back here is this root cellar. And I when I came here, I was really interested in cob, and I wanted to experiment to see if I could get a cob retaining wall.
Yes.
That would work.
Right.
Because it's a very moist environment, and so I was like, well, I'm gonna experiment with the root cellar.
Yes.
Because then if it fails, I just wall this off.
Yeah. Oh well.
And it's been great. It doesn't even really smell any danker than the rest of the house. It helps I don't have a ton of stuff in it.
Right.
But I did. So the behind, and it's actually a very small cob wall. It's only like 8 inches, or maybe 10 at the base and 6 at the top, and it's round, so that helps a lot. And then behind that, I did put a 6 mil. Just this,
Yep.
And then I didn't put any insulation down here, and then I did as I came up the wall. I put 1 inch and then 2 inches and then 3, so that there's more insulation above.
Right.
The idea that you're sort of getting more of the root cellar effect down here.
Right.
And then of course I backfilled it with gravel so that it would drain well. So there's maybe a little less mold here, but that was just from the initial.
Yeah. Well, we end up having to put.
And it's never been wet or anything like that.
We end up having to put a borax in all of our plasters anyway. Just because linseed oil gets eaten by mold. I love using hemp oil instead. I found second pressing industrial hemp oil is about the same cost in bulk as linseed oil, and it doesn't mold like that. It doesn't
have the nutritive value.
Yeah, it doesn't have.
We're talking serious bulk.
Yeah.
A lot.
Like 100 gallons. Or...
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I feel like the village could go in on something like that.
Oh yeah. It becomes quite reasonable if you can afford to get the 250 gallon totes of it from Canada.
And when you use linseed oil, different people have different thoughts on boiled versus raw.
So raw takes forever.
Yeah.
And boiled isn't even boiled anymore. It's all the chemical additives.
Like heavy metal additives.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't actually buy boiled that I know of.
So with those things in mind, do you use either one based on the application? If you're in a
I
kitchen, you
use
raw,
hemp oil if I
you
can.
just use hemp oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
And
if
so
I'm
it dries better also.
absolutely,
than the
and if
raw
I must
oil.
use linseed, then I'll just buy the cheap stuff, the chemical stuff. Because the problem is that I've run into is that if you buy the raw stuff, it takes so long to cure, especially if people don't thin it, because people don't want to thin it. They want to just slap it on, and then it goes rancid.
Yeah.
And that's just like overpowering.
Yeah. It gets a little green fuzz on it and just.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, show me the other. I'm really excited to see the dome too. Do we have anything else in here?
I mean, I got a closet sort of over there. Yeah. I mean, what have I learned? I mean, so. You know, when I frame the house out, there's actually in these front columns, there's actually a wood post and beam frame that's really dirty, you know, quick and dirty, sort of like, you know, this situation up here.
Yep.
Because I had a lot of cob work experience and I just didn't really know that much about wood framing.
Right.
And then I sort of, you know, encase everything in cob.
Exactly.
And
this
then,
makes a huge difference in the speed at which you can build.
They're all either, you know, treated or cedar, I think. So, what I sort of think about clay is like, you know, you embed wood in concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That wood's gonna rot because that concrete wicks. But I feel like clay is almost the opposite, where it actually wicks moisture out of the things it's touching and then breathes.
If you ever get to the cliff dwellings in New Mexico, or in Colorado, New Mexico, the 1,000-year-old wood there is still there because it's enveloped in clay. Yeah.
It's also very dry.
But the same thing happens in Wales.
Clay is actually wicking moisture from the things it's touching and then breathing.
Right. Exactly.
And when I talked to Tom Cundiff, I don't know if you he's a timber
yes.
framer. He's done a couple of buildings around here, and I was telling him about, you know, this kind of detailing. He was just like, wrap it in plastic, don't, because he was, you know, he's not a natural.
No, he's an industrial
and so he's
builder.
used to like putting wood in like a masonry chimney,
right?
That has
and it needs to be wrapped, and it'll still rot eventually.
And so I was sort of concerned, and then intuitively, it's like, I think this is fine, and now I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, his work is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, there is one load-bearing cob column over here, just because I was like, I don't want to see.
Just check it out.
But I think it's been fine so far. And then I sort of like buttressed with some rocks and stuff on the outside. But so I framed it. Didn't really know that much about insulation, and then lived here for a year, and I was like, oh, insulation is important. And so then I had the option of like, well, do I just have cob thermal bridges everywhere? And what I ended up doing is, this is, you know, a very non-elegant solution, but you can see it over here. So I ended up wrapping the columns in just recycled
foam.
Foam.
Yeah.
You see that here. And then, so there's basically just like a wood post, a cob column, and then 2 to 4 inches of foam as I could.
So this is like the biggest truth window you'll ever see.
And I'll probably cover this someday with some sort of wood trim, but like.
You know, I kind of like this. I didn't think I would, but I kind of like this like, I feel like I'm living in an ant farm, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, look.
Could be an ant farm there someday. the bugs and the critters and stuff, the carpenter bees really are. The clay here is softer than the hardwood wood we have. So.
Oh yeah. So I just plaster over them if I get to a point where I'm freaked out by them.
Yeah. I know. It's just, I just have so much to do. I'm just like, this is sort of.
Yeah.
It's all aesthetic, you know.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, you give a workshop and I'll show people, you know, how the weather has eroded different walls and stuff like that, and then just like, and they're like, oh, it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, what are we trying to do? You know.
Yeah.
Are you know, like, it looks different than something that's finished, but like, so like the whole thing of like letting the straw stick out, I'm like, I totally understand.
What are you trying to do? Are you trying for an aesthetic, or are you trying to make something that lasts, or are you trying
to protect something under it?
Yeah.
You know? And if it's you know, then people are like, oh, it's an aesthetic. And it's like, well, so that's subjective. Like, you know, smooth is not necessarily better. So anyway, yeah. There's like more to say, but
thanks for letting us see your space.
Yeah, this is really fantastic. I love your sticks just wedged right in there.
Yeah, and you don't quite know. So like this is all just placeholder, you know, but someday maybe
You'll
I'll
get
get to some
there.
nice polished walnut and stuff on that. But in the meantime,
In the meantime, you got a place to put your
to
books.
put my stuff, gotta keep that on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, did you want to go in the gnome dome? Is that what
That
you're
would
talking
be
about?
lovely, yes.
Yeah. You know, I always tell people, you know, build, you know, sustainable building is all about what you have.
Yeah.
And like, we tear down old buildings, you got wonky wood, and so it's like, build something wonky with it, you know, you don't need to have straight lumber necessarily.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me for the plans for this, and I was like, no, there's no plans. It's all like, it's just whatever weird wood you have, right?
Yeah, I do love the curve, the splay
Yeah.
differential is so fun.
Yeah.
Because you can do that with the sheet metal.
And I love doing, you know, structures like this because like you don't have to worry about being tight. You don't have to worry about insulation.
Right.
It's like what I call like California building. You know,
That's
it's
right.
just
California building's an
like,
excellent
those
description.
assholes. You know, they
Right.
just do that with all their stuff. So this was here when I came. The ground was up here, sort of like with the road. So I dug all this out with a backhoe, and then you know gave it. There's a lot of drainage. There's actually a lot of drainage under this gravel pad, but the idea is I have these big ideas about putting more buildings out here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll get to that, but and then I was just going to try to go up with stone, basically a stone facade that sort of covers this, and then the idea is to actually have eventually this will transition to cob, and there'll be sort of these like sort of stone corners, you know, and then sort of cob in here with some alcoves and stuff like that, and then a huge top plate and sill plate oak beam to then there would be actually another building coming out from this.
Right.
So this is like another breezeway space.
Yeah.
We'll see when that happens, but in the meantime, here we are. Yeah. So then this was an earthbag. It is an earthbag dome, so it looked like how my house does. Yeah, you can just leave that door open. I actually just had the doors open this morning because it was cool enough, but yeah, this was like just a perfect starter project for me because like I just had a lot of clay experience and I didn't really know a whole lot else, and it was really cool because of the mold stuff. The guy tried to sell it. He was like, he built it, had some stuff with molds. He didn't really know how to finish it, you know, and he was like, I'm done with this. And so he moved and tried to sell it. Nobody wanted to buy it. Thought it was a liability, and then I could just come and I basically just squatted in it.
Yeah.
For, you know, a year. And the Dancing Rabbit standard is like you live here for 6 months before you're a member.
Yep.
And you can't lease a building or land until you're a member. So you really can't build. You're not supposed to build it for at least 6 months. But this building was like falling down. It was just a hole in the ground. And so I could was afforded I could just do things on it, and people didn't care because they're like, it's just, you know, it's the gnome dome. It's just a hole in the ground.
It's better than it was.
And so that was like a good, whenever people are like, I don't know, like want something pristine to start with, I'm just like, no, like you gotta like find something to fix, to improve on, you know, like that's a pattern language thing too, like site repair.
Yeah.
You don't build on the best part. You build,
leave the best
yeah,
part.
You'll ruin the best part, whatever
Yeah.
you do to it. So you leave it. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I was in here one winter with like pink foam on the walls down here and then blue spray foam, and it was just like living in a Smurf house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty just tiny masonry heater that works pretty well. It does have a damper that you can close it and then redirect the flue through the bed.
Nice.
And that works pretty well.
That's fun.
I play around with I sunk some aluminum window frames sort of in that flue into the floor with maybe it'll pull some of the heat, but it just all the heat just
not noticeable. Yeah.
You'd have to insulate them, and so that then it somehow gets the heat out farther.
Yeah.
And I also didn't embed them in the flue, so they were just right under it, so it didn't work. But that was super early experiment.
Were these here before? Or did you put those ones
I put those in. So those are just aesthetics. So those are just little,
fun.
just pretty small rounds, and then they have just little strips of wood behind them, and then I screwed that into the earth bag. and then just plastered over the oak sticks. Yeah.
Nice.
This up here is where the plaster fell off, which one more coat of lime wash would probably hide this edge, but you can sort of see it there where it came down.
How's this in the winter?
It's good. Yeah, and similar to my house, I feel like if you're in it, then it's pretty easy to heat. And if you don't have somebody in here for a month and then you come in, if I do, I don't often rent it out in the winter, but if I do have a guest, I'll have a fire the previous day just to.
Our cottage is like that too. Our cob cottage is like that.
Yeah. The chimney. So in the winter there's just a cap, but then in the summer I take the cap off, stick this exhaust fan in. So and then I open up the air. There's an air intake from the outside, and so then I just take the ash clean out door off, put a little cardboard over the grate, so then that's shooting air out.
Nice.
And then air. I had a fan in the intake, and it burned out, and I didn't make an access door like an idiot, So like someday maybe I'll replace it, but.
So where do people go online to rent this? This is great.
It's on Airbnb. I generally do always block out our program dates, and because that's a priority for me, and it's also a lot easier to host people on programs. But it's on Airbnb under the Gnome Dome, and you never know. Like people sometimes don't know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
But I've actually never had any bad experiences. I only had positive experiences.
Well, these are just like black pipe
culverts.
Nice.
These are just these are great. It gets it to the outside.
Yeah. It's pretty thick wall. It's like 3 foot wall almost. Yeah. I have had designs to sort of do the same thing on the outside as the inside with wood, and it's just I'm sort of like, I know if I do that it's gonna rot, and it's just a low priority. But
I always wanted to create, like, use some curved black locust or something to create kind of eyebrows over the windows, so that like it looked like kind of beaver lodgy from the outside, so you can't actually see the window from the outside as much as but you can still get some light inside. If I ever do my underground earthbag dome, I'll do that.
Take some inspiration from nature.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
The skylight is critical, but I always tell people, like, the skylight is just the worst passive solar.
Yeah.
It's just lets the summer heat in and lets all the winter heat out at the top. But I've thought about trying to come up with some sort of, round cushion that folds, that you can sort of, put up on cold nights, but it's just, there's not usually enough people staying in it in the winter.
Is it a two-layer dome?
It is. It's a double pane acrylic. Yeah.
So just a piece of that Mylar bubble wrap stuff with a little bit of Velcro on it will pop in nicely underneath. And you pull it down and tuck it in the corner.
Yeah, just Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And it's even better, like a shade tarp or aluminized shade tarp or that same piece of Mylar bubble wrap over the top of the dome in the summer.
Yeah, I should get some Reflectex bubble wrap up there, because I like the sheet. It lets light in, but it definitely lets heat in also. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And last summer I actually had a little piece of bindweed somehow get between the panes. And it
pretty.
At first I was like, but then I was like, it's beautiful. But now it's just, I need to do a little upkeep up there. Yeah.
I had a friend, we put a piece of billboard tarp over it with the printing on it, and just used a piece that was like a landscape part of an advertisement, so it was like different colors but kind of abstract, and then it blocked pretty well. It blocked the sun in California pretty well. And then
Mark was thinking about using that for something. I don't know.
Place where it was woven, it let a little bit of light through the weave, but it didn't let a bunch of heat in. It's nice. I love how you just took a dresser and put another top on it.
I wasn't sure how that was gonna, if that was gonna get dank, but it hasn't really. Once a summer, I'll take the drawers all the way out and get them in the sun.
Yeah.
But that's about it. Yeah.
It's all you need, and then your plugs cobbed over. I like that.
Yeah, and I originally it was 12 volt DC. And now I've gone to 120, and so like I don't know if I'd do that again. Like I don't even think I'd put electric tape around the terminals.
Oh.
And I'm like, but I've checked to see if there's a draw, when everything's off.
That's fine.
And it's not. So I'm like, I guess it's not that big of a deal. But it's this kind of thing that you can. Sometimes you do stuff like that when you don't know what you're doing, you get away with it. And other times it's like, oh no, now you're gonna have a 5-watt draw.
Yeah.
Just constantly grounded, but.
And somebody will zap themselves a little, and they'll complain and put it in your Airbnb.
Yeah, it hasn't. Once they've been enclosed, I haven't had that issue.
Yeah, I really love your wainscot here, the woodwork.
Yeah, that was just old red oak that somebody had just in a pile. Just gave it to me for I think $5.
Yeah. Well, and they see it as useless because it's not the right length.
Yeah.
But it's fine for what you wanted to do.
Yeah. And there were a bunch of pieces I couldn't use. They were a little too wonky, but
yeah.
Oh, and this quilt, my partner custom quilted this so that it fits the shape of the bed.
Yeah.
Because it's just like otherwise.
It's a lot of small pieces. She put a lot of time into that.
Yeah, she's.
Did we meet her last night?
She wasn't there.
Okay.
Yeah, she doesn't actually live here. I did buy a little cob house for her to stay in when she's here as a guest house, but she's only here about a third of the time.
The one that April and Ziggy built?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was actually very sentimental to me because that's the house that got me here.
Yeah.
And I was working on a cob house in Iowa in 2007-8.
Yeah.
And I was getting to the roof and I was like, I gotta see what to do here. And then I found Ziggy's website. And I came as a work exchanger for 2 weeks.
Right.
Right after he had put the roof on. And so that's like what got me here. And then and fast forward now, it's like, oh no, like now that's my house. Like I finally have my because that project actually it's another story for not the internet, but the project turned south, and it was all fine, and it ultimately that project ending is what got me here.
Right.
Because I was like, I want to see more.
Right.
And
were you there when they had to pull the rocket heater out from under the bed and redo everything, all that?
That would have been, so I was here briefly in 2008, and then that would have been in 2009, and then I came back to move here in 2010.
Yeah.
So I missed that little installment. Yeah. I was here when they dug up the floor, and they did the things we talked about of putting a vapor barrier.
Right.
And 2 inches of pink foam.
Yeah.
I was here when they did that.
But there's no insulation in the roof.
Yeah, that's the floor is the only thing that building has insulation in. And people, it's funny because people come and they're like, it's like, oh, it's a cob house, so it's cold, which is true. But it's also like, but there's no insulation in the roof.
Right.
So like you can have like a straw bale building or like a conventional, 10-inch bat of fiberglass, and you have no insulation in the roof, and that's still going to be a cold house.
And I love that they've willingly shared those errors as hey, don't do this way. Because it saves so many people so many heartaches.
Yeah. And I love, like, when I give tours, I'll talk about that. It's like we talk about this house as a failure, but we are an experimental village. We are here to broadcast the lessons that we learned, that things don't work. And that's a very valuable tool. It's
absolutely.
Success to be like, hey, I hear you're from Minnesota and you want to build a cob house because you think it's warm, but like, guess what?
Please don't.
Here we are in Missouri, and this was our experience.
Yeah. Yeah, this is that building is a very important object lesson and the way that it was shared with the world makes it a sweet object lesson of, hey, look, this doesn't work here, and it was carefully documented.
Yeah.
It's carefully
And yeah,
documented.
and you don't want to talk about it, and then you just have a failure. But now you talk about it, and you transformed it.
Oh, look at the switch in the floor.
That was the one for the fan in the intake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just
love
put the floor
it.
in, and then this was not intentional, but then I was showing it to someone, and then my cat ran in, and that's when you get
The paw prints.
Oh, the paw prints are the best.
Yeah.
And then of course when the cat ran in, I was like, oh well, I gotta leave these.
Yeah.
I was like, my first impression was like, oh, I gotta redo that. And then,
We've got some paw prints in ours too, or to really like go down there right now.
Yeah.
You can't tell a cat what to do. But...
Yeah.
You can't tell
You
kids
can,
what
you
to
can
do.
give her a little toss in here.
That's right.
Yeah.
What fun.
Yeah, but
Well, do you have a minute to talk about your
Sure.
your kitchen?
Sure.
That'd
Totally.
be great. And I'd love to go upstairs first and just.
Yeah.
That's such a lovely place to sit.
Yeah, I'm, for me, so actually speaking about outdoor spaces and stuff like that, I really like building round and curves, but I actually, for me, I'm always like, when you build a house, you're framing an inside, but
Right.
you're also framing an outside.
Yes.
And for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of just a circle house, because it doesn't create sort of like positive concave bits outside.
Right.
And so like whenever you can make some sort of other wall coming off it or whatever, like that's just something I'm always really.
Have you seen any of Bryce Matte's work in France?
I haven't.
Look up the Love Shacks.
The Love Shack.
Love Shacks on Facebook, because he's succeeded in exactly what you're talking about, of taking the round and then using the outside to be amphitheater space and whatnot, which is a lovely, lovely trick.
The Love Shacks.
Love Shacks, yep.
In France. Mathis? Is that what you
Bryce, B-R-I-C-E, Mathy, M-A-T-H-A-Y. Oh, look at these beautiful, beautiful black mulberries. Yum, yum.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like, you have a house and then it's like, oh, but we can also do stuff up on it, and it's all like, when I do natural building workshops and stuff, we'll compare, green building to natural building.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about connection, and like conventional building, green building, it does really well at sort of like providing shelter against.
Yep.
It keeps the elements out, it keeps rodents out and stuff like that. But I don't think it's as good as like connecting us with our environment. And so like, it's just like you have a roundwood building.
Yes.
And that's like you go out to the forest, you get a tree.
Yeah.
You come back and now you're connected to that tree. Green building, you go to Lowe's, get a 2x4, and you come back. And so like you compare and contrast those experiences, and it's night and day how it connects you to your environment.
Sunray calls that shopping in God's hardware store.
Yeah.
And I've stolen that phrase.
Shopping in God's hardware store.
I love this though, this connection.
You got this.
My ideal on a building is to be that you feel invited out when you're in, you feel invited in when you're out, and you don't pause at the threshold. And so like my double wide is like the worst example, because if anything more than 2 steps, you just don't go outside or inside if you can help it. He just kind of pauses. You say, no, I'm good. I didn't need whatever that was. I didn't need that experience. So then you don't go inside or outside. You go in and stay in, or you go out and stay out. And so to have a place that invites you to live in between, like your little breezeway.
Yeah, it's like a seamless transition. Maybe.
Exactly, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And this is just lovely up here.
Yeah,
Sit here.
So it's definitely like the whole like garden growing wild concept, and it's so right now I have this rye that I use as a cover crop, and I'm about to
Fireplace on top
snip
of the
it
roof.
and
That's great.
fold it down as mulch.
Uh-huh.
And then I've like planted actually a bunch of peppers and tomatoes in here. Some of them I'm sort of trying to get from early tomatoes, but then that way you can transplant things out. You don't have like the sun scalding. They don't have as much of the stress from transplanting. and you let them grow for, you know, a couple weeks, and then snip the rye, and then boom, they got full sun, and you have mulch, and it's just beautiful. I love rye. I don't know.
Well, it's just such a good pioneer species.
Yeah, I mean, it's the allelopathic thing. It inhibits other weed germination. And then in this case, I actually like it as a privacy screen.
Yeah.
Then I'll have my trifold mattress that I'll bring up here, and I think Sarah and I are planning on sleeping out here tonight. It's just, sleeping up here is like the most centering thing, when you can just sleep out directly into the stars, and like just think about how like you just like looking not up but out.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Glorious.
Yeah, the mosquitoes I think would carry us away where we live in the swamp, but I really miss that.
Sometimes they like today. There's like a little bit of a breeze, and you know, I don't think they're gonna be too bad tonight. But once in a while, they can come out for sure. Yeah. Just planted some passion flower. Hopefully that. Such a sort of a deep-rooted plant, but you know, you don't really need that much. There's actually not that much soil. There's a lot of soil here. This is over the back wall. You know,
yes.
That's the strong spot. There's not that much soil actually over these plots. And so like, but even the rye, you know, there's like maybe only like whatever 4 or 5 inches of dirt, but it's premium dirt, you know.
Right.
So it doesn't.
But rye will grow on hard clay and just work its way down in.
Yeah.
So you don't need fantastic. So the fact that you gave it 4 inches is like a nice head start.
Yeah.
And I love how when you go back down, you feel like you're going down into this tree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that maple was a volunteer. Like that's grown up. This sycamore I actually planted when I started this house.
Oh.
Yeah, and then it's just like gotten so many positive vibes and pee-pee that it's just, you know, shot. It's like I'm like, man, this thing really grew off faster than I was expecting.
Yeah.
And now it even starts to shade out my strawberries a little bit too much sometimes. Afternoon, but
you have to have talk with it.
It's okay. Yeah. And of course it adversely affects my passive solar, but like I'm just like, you know, I like fire, and we get enough clouds in the winter that like I'd rather have shade.
Yeah,
like,
shade is more important in this climate.
Yeah.
When the leaves come down and you got your solar back again for most of the part.
Yeah, and like I mean, it's not like I don't have any passive solar. I got a couple different orchards. I'm about to plant zinnias. I'm gonna like this patch. This patch has been here now 3 years, so I'm gonna like really heavily thin that. You know, want some strawberries. So you probably got your own, but
that smells fantastic.
I'm gonna put zinnias in here. Yeah.
Flash of color.
I love it. I really love actually. I'm gonna do short zinnias here because this is a really low soil zone. But over in here, there's a little bit more. This is like only like 2 or 3 inches of soil. This is bigger. I like to do like the big 3 foot tall bright red zinnias, and it's just this drift of red up in, and it just looks so good from the road.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's a drift. That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, I love it. I love the big bold color. We got some. So then eventually the plan, we'll see, is that then these stairs here keep coming up, and then there's a little terrace that will then go into the second story.
Right.
There, and then you know this is all just sort of like a placeholder ragweed war zone, but someday. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing. This is fantastic. This is all just so local, so grabbed from other piles, and it's a lovely treatment. This little terrace here, such a lovely treatment of that space you need in order to cover everything.
Yeah, it's always, I say, a balance between the hoarders and the wasters, because piles that I've got for, I have piles, the same pile that's been there 5 years, and maybe I'll never use it, but then as soon as I throw it away, then I'm like, where'd that piece of wood go?
Yep. I have the same problem. People got to throw stuff away for me so that I'll behave. All right.